Righto, it's time now to tackle the headline and all eyes on Essendon. What a massive story they've been this season. The coach, Brad Scott Macca, says they're making progress, but are they a better side than they were 12 months ago?
I think they're making progress, but they're not making progress fast enough for us in the media, but also fast enough for the supporters who are getting a little bit angry about this as well. I think the tail end of what they've been able to do this year pretty much mirrored what happened last year. History's repeated itself in that sense. We'll have a look at this graphic. So Essendon won 4 of the last 11 games from round 15 last year. It's been the same situation this year. It's a very similar story in that sense. They've won 3 of their past 9. And, you know, obviously against Sydney and also Brisbane at the Gabba, I can't see them winning another game this year. So that is going to be a situation. I think, you know, on the balance of probability, I think their list is getting better. You get someone like, you know, Nate Caddy coming in. We're seeing a few other players develop. But I think overall we won't really know until probably the back end of next season.
So we saw fans throwing the scarves, water bottles onto the ground as Gold Coast won at the weekend, pinched it late. They were inaccurate. The Bombers 1 goal 9. Where have they blown it? Where does it fall down for Essendon?
I think it's a mental situation with Essendon in a lot of ways. I don't know how mentally strong some of these, you know, kids are, and maybe that is, the fact that we've had a situation, you know, since, you know, probably the last 5 or 6 years where, you know, they've been put themselves in a position to actually do well, and they haven't. They can't actually finish it off. You know, they blew it completely to kick 1-9 in the last quarter, and they were easy shots, guys. They were absolutely easy shots. Jake Stringer would normally kick all 3 of those. He blew them. You look at, there were others in there as Merritt missed goals. Like guys who should be kicking goals, you know, I think if Stringer kicks those 3, the contract's done already, isn't it?
I think that the frustrating thing for Essendon fans is the teams that they've lost to. In the
that's the issue.
They haven't lost to good teams. They haven't been blown off the park by top 4 contenders.
Bottom teams.
They got smashed by St Kilda. They lost to Adelaide at Marvel Stadium. Fremantle, they shouldn't have won. I was at that game. They shouldn't have won that game. They only just got over in the last 30 seconds. And Gold Coast hasn't won a game away in 17 weeks. So it's just so frustrating that they're in prime position to finish top 4. Not top 8.
So what about the list? That's where the fascination is. This is a club who hasn't won a final in 20 years. We've been talking up a lot about their draft picks, Reid, Cox, Perkins, Hobbs in particular. And I think they've got some fascinating list decisions to make at the end of the year. So Nick Bryan, who's been pretty encouraging over the past couple of weeks.
Got to keep playing him, Clarky.
Well, someone's going to come for him. Ben Hobbs is another one who's struggling to get a game. Jake Stringer, potentially only a 1-year deal, I think might be in the works for Jake Stringer. Dylan Shield, do they need him? They've got so many midfielders. They're surplus. I wonder if St Kilda will have another crack. Elijah Sardis can't get a game. Doubts on him. There's no doubt about that. We know Dyson Heppel, the champ, retired today. Sam Wiedemann hasn't been able to make an impact. So these are some of the big decisions. All eyes will be on this over the next couple of weeks. There's no doubt about that, because maybe Brad Scott is in a mood to make some bold decisions.
We know what he did at the end of last year. He was angry at the end of last year, and some of the players then took themselves on the camp overseas, and we thought that had some sort of you know, bonus for them throwing into the early part of the season. They've got to look into what is causing these late season fade-outs. Is that a conditioning thing? Is it a mental thing? Is it a situation where, you know, they need to change some of their mid-season, in that period of time? Do they need to just change up a few things here and there?
I think players
got to work into it.
Yeah, players can be competitive and can handle the big moments.
That's the issue.
Speaking the list, so they have had a lot of first-round picks. Barnesy, you've had a good look at this. Where are you giving your ticks and your crosses?
Yeah, they've got an enormous amount of first-round picks on the list. Particularly for trade-in players, they've traded in a lot of first-round picks. If we look back in the history here, we've given some green ticks to a number of players there. I think Jaden Laverde, we're a little bit on the fence with. Owen Francis was a disappointment at pick 6. So they did pretty well in this era. None of them, though, are absolute superstars. Joe Danaher's become an excellent player over at Brisbane, but he's not playing for Essendon anymore. And then when we flip forward from there, it's really not pretty reading. So 2020 was their big draft. This was the one that they were going to pick up at least 2 out of 3 as generational players.
That was the COVID year.
You've got to give them a little pass for that, but they set themselves up for this, and unfortunately it didn't work. Nick Cox, we're still a bit cautious about him. Archie Perkins isn't really
What's redeemable out of those?
Caddy's a tick.
Caddy will end up being a tick.
Caddy will be a good night, I think. Ben Hobbs, I'm not sure.
Hobbs can play. Reid just needs a run with his body. I mean, his back and hamstring. Archie Perkins out of the team, I think that's interesting.
Yeah, I like Archie Perkins, but he's not playing consistently, and it's been 5 years since he was drafted. He should be a better player than he is.
and Cox, you wonder what sort of position. Brad Scott, I think we like the way he coaches. Do they need to bring in? They got Daniel Siracusa, who's highly rated. Do you think their off-field structure? I feel like they've reviewed all this. They did this a year or two ago. They talked about the development program, etc. Is there anything else they can do there?
Oh, I think they do need to look at the coaches. Absolutely, it doesn't hurt to have enough. You got to try and have a crack at everything, and they've got to get to the bottom of it. Brad Scott's the man, absolutely. And the bottom line is a lot of this comes back to the players. You've got to put it back on the players as well.
I agree. You mentioned the psychology earlier.
That's a problem.
I think that's when you speak to Essendon fans, the thing that keeps coming up for me is, they got a lot of nice, talented footballers. It's an old-fashioned footy term, mongrel, but they need those with the ruthless, competitive edge, the streak. I reckon Nate Caddy's got that. You can't doubt Zach Merritt. Sam Durham looks like a beauty. Outside of that...
And that's the DNA of Essendon. Yeah, that's the traditional Essendon history. You're talking about the back pocket plumber. Now, that was Richmond with Kevin Sheedy, but he brought that to Essendon. Mark Harvey.
Thompson.
That 1984, 85, those teams were as hard as any team you've ever seen. 2000, they were ruthless. They were absolutely ruthless. They need to get a bit of that back again.
Start of the year, we're talking about the Essendon edge. We haven't seen that. It will be another massive post-season for the Bombers. They'll continue to be a big story. Well done, Macca. Thank you, Barnty. This has been Tackle the Headline. We'll see you next week.